Is it a choice, or are you addicted? And our theme text is found in Philippians chapter 4, verse 5. Let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand.
And we spent the first hour, Jonathan, talking about addictions. We talked about what they are, how they work, phases of addictions, how things can start off innocently and with curiosity and develop into something that you can't live without. And it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous thing. The idea behind addiction, some of the definitions, and one of the definitions that we're using here is the involvement in use of a substance, a relationship, or activity to the exclusion of responsibilities. And I think that's a very appropriate definition to look at when you're involved in something in which the price that you pay far outweighs the return that you get from it. And, some of the comments in the first hour were in relation to, well, who decides who's got an addiction? Can I decide looking in on somebody else's life, oh, that's addictive behavior, you can't do that? Do I have the right for such things? Is it just a personal thing? And those are all questions of subjection that, are certainly open for discussion. What we want to do in the second hour is look at addictions through the standpoint of some scriptural reasoning. And how does the Bible deal with such things? And if so, how? And I think we want to go in that direction. We've got a couple of things to do just before that. I understand we have a call.
Yes, we do. Welcome to Christian Questions. This is Jonathan and Rick. Who are we speaking with?
Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. I'm Peter.
We knew that.
Okay, because all right.
Got it.
Yep. I think Don had some very good points.
Uh-huh.
But, to coin a phrase, the bottom line seems that when you do something that is an obsession, which is a kind of a term that you could probably use, or an addiction, that harms others, that's something to seriously look at. And I really believe that when you make something unlawful, let's look at drug use, then other innocent people are hurt by the actions of those who want to get those drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And in that area, I think it would make sense to say legalize these substances. Now, everybody who uses them is, I think if they sat down, would be aware of the consequences to themselves. But like gambling and drug use and things that affect, other family members, or driving too fast or erratically in the highway, you take other people who are, following the rules of safety and putting their lives in jeopardy. So the regulations, like in foods and in other things, are important as guidelines for safety, because there are those who would take advantage without those regulations. But the addictive thing, I really feel is it's how it affects others and yourself too.
Mm-hmm.
But there you have a choice, a moral choice of yourself, but others, I think that's a consideration you have to put first.
I think that's a point well taken.
And I do want to give you time to go into your second hour, so I'll be listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.
Have a good day.
All right, we appreciate Peter's perspective on the ideas of the legalization versus not, but the responsibility and the hurt that we could potentially bring.
Right. Protecting others.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very important part of this whole conversation on addiction. And Jonathan, before we get into the scriptural perspective, addictions are in two major areas of life. Those things that are outside of regular, everyday humanity in terms of existence, and those things that are a part of. For instance, gambling, an activity that is not part of your everyday life, doesn't have to be, but it's a choice to get involved in. Whereas when you look at eating disorders, everybody has to eat. Mm-hmm. Sexual addiction, that's part of the human's normal behavior. So it's interesting that you got addictions in both of these general areas. I want to read just a couple of quick paragraphs on both of these. And this first paragraph, it's on gambling. It fascinates me. It just utterly fascinates me.
The Earl of Sandwich was a problem gambler who wouldn't leave the gambling table long enough to eat his dinner. So his servants had no choice but to develop something he could eat with one hand while he gambled with the other. Hence, the birth of the sandwich as we know it today. This tidbit from the New Kriegel Publications release, Gambling, Don't Bet on It, demonstrates the degree to which gambling can alter a lifestyle, a personality, and in this case, even our eating habits.
So where did the sandwich come from? There it is. It came because you had a compulsive gambler not being able to leave the table. That's where the invention of a sandwich came from. I mean, you think about that, you think, man. But that sort of describes what we're talking about. He was doing this to the detriment of himself. And it was obvious. And just a quick paragraph on gambling. Legalized gambling is one of the fastest expanding enterprises in the United States. In 2003, the gross revenues from gambling were $72.9 billion, more money than Americans spend on movie tickets, theme parks, spectator sports, and video games combined. Gambling has attained unprecedented levels of acceptance, glamorization, and popularity in the United States. Once confined to the remotest desert region of Nevada, gambling is now, in one form or another, is legal in 48 of the 50 states. Utah and Hawaii are the only exceptions. It's amazing how big an enterprise that is. And the question is, how do most people treat it? And what happens to those people who end up getting in over their head? And how damaging does it end up being? We're not here to pick on gambling, okay? We are here to say addictive behavior can develop in that area, as well as many, many other areas. And let's read just a quick overview of on sexual addiction, because I think that's another area that is getting a little bit more recognition, and it's another area of addiction.
A sexual addiction results from an abuse of the natural sex drive that each person is born with. The abuse can start at any time in life and then progresses until it becomes a compulsion with the sexuality addicted person cannot cope with it. The sexual addiction eventually affects every part of the person's life, including self-respect, relationships with family and friends, and finances and career. For the sexual addicted person, sex is not the profoundly wonderful experience it is supposed to be. A sexual addiction is like alcohol to an alcoholic and drugs to a junkie. It is a fix that the sexually addicted person will do just about anything to get, despite what's shown in the movies and hyped in the media. Sexual addiction is not fun. It is a compulsive drive that brings short-term thrills and long-term miseries. And just like alcohol or drugs, overcoming it can be the most important decision in your life.
And that last line, Jonathan, I think is telling. It can bring short-term thrills and long-term miseries. Addictive behavior, any negative addictive behavior, falls into that category. Short-term thrills or short-term relief, but long-term misery. Again, the price that you pay it's not worth what you get back from it. Addictions ruin lives. That's
for sure.
Just the way it is. They ruin lives, and we live in a society that seems to be far more addictive than in previous times. I mean, we spread addictions to thrills in the internet and shopping and success and romance and entertainment and exercise and power and all kinds of things that you would have never thought would be areas of addiction, but they are, because they overrun. Why is that? You got to ask yourself, why are we in such a situation now where it is so more prevalent? And I've got some thoughts on that. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Let's get to the scriptural perspective. From a spiritual standpoint, first of all, let's look at sin very quickly, and then let's look at this scripture, let your moderation be known to all men.
1 John 2:16, for all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passeth away, and the lust thereof, but he that doeth the will of God abideth forever.
Okay, so it says all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Well, there's a few things there. First of all, there's two catalysts in there. There's lust or desire, and then there's pride, okay? And then there's three categories of sin that are mentioned. Lust of the eyes, lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. These three categories, Jonathan, every sin that exists comes from one of these three or a combination.
Okay.
All right, and I think that's an important place for us to start in looking at addictions, because an addiction is taking something that in some cases could be okay and sending it overboard where it's not okay. And that becomes a very sinful activity. An occasional alcoholic beverage is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But when the alcoholic beverage is needed to start the day, get you through lunch, have it with dinner, and help you to go to sleep, that's not okay. It's a whole different ball game. And we gotta look at this from the standpoint of, okay, it's putting something that could normally be, in some cases, appropriate into a situation where it's not appropriate.